about witchcraft, and we're especially looking at these structural powers that we deal with in the heavenly realm. Now, before I continue, I would like to know if there are any questions. Normally, when we are dealing with such important topics, sometimes we want to give opportunity to some of you, especially what we are sharing is a bit new to many people. These are not very common topics that we are dealing with. So I just want to give you opportunity to ask a question in case you need to clarification on one of the areas of many of the areas that we've been dealing with. So in case you have any question, you can chat your question or an observation that you may have on what we've been sharing. Please, let's use that time before we continue. You can chat or you can put up your hand and ask a question. Then I'll clarify on some of the things that we've been dealing with. Yovan, are you asking a question?
Yes, Bishop.
Amina.
Bishop, waliwo bakamusomesako ne wakati n'ogamba nti obuzibu bwaffe si doctrine naye just awakano being. Njagala okwongera okutegeera ekyakano being ekyo kitulebesaamu okubeera nga obanga kitwawula. Bishop.
Say that again. Ogame kiki?
Okay. Wali osomesa ku gundi n'osomesa n'ogamba nti ebintu ebitwawukanye nnyo si doctrines oba doctrine ya good doctrine eno naye nti kano beings zaffe zitwawudde zitulemeseza okubeera nga tubeera united etuwa omubi ebbanga okubeera nga saawa zokati bino ebigenda mu maaso abasanyuza simanyi kati ayagala kunga kibuga kyonna osomesako mu ngeri eno ogezako okugaziya okwawukana kwaffe noyogeramu kukaawa awantu. Njagala okwongera okumanya ku kyakkano gundi zaffe ezitwafekitingamu.
Okay. So what I was describing was that our canon nature is really the cause of most of our differences. When you look at the divisions in the life of the church of Corinth, for example, in Corinth, some people are saying we are of Paul. Others were saying we are of Peter. Others were saying we are of Apollos. And others were saying we are of Jesus. They were in 4 groups. But their difference wasn't really doctrinal. It wasn't that one group believed something different from another. It's just the canon nature is really the cause. Because when there is a lot of carnality or spiritual immaturity, always causes the people who are carnal to emphasize small things. The carnal nature cannot get along with a brother or sister. It always looks for a reason of disagreement, and that is what I was emphasizing, that when people grow spiritually, they start to, there are things that you overlook and say, my brother maybe doesn't believe this, but I believe in this. Like when he was talking about eating and not eating in the book of Romans, Paul was saying you don't reject a brother just because there's something he eats and you don't eat it. That is an example. Or he worships on this day, I don't worship on that day. So those are the kind of things he was emphasizing, saying, don't put emphasis on those small things. Look at the bigger picture. As long as somebody is born again, you learn to put up with them because Jesus has died for them. He has accepted them. And when he's talking to the Galatians, he lists the list of the works of the flesh, which I want to read again. That list is in 4 groupings, the works of the flesh, but you'll find the biggest of these works of the flesh. Let's read it. Bishop, if you can help us to read this list here. You'll find one of the biggest lists covered that area of division.
Now, the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you before.
You can end there. This list has 17 works of the flesh. And you notice if you were to study them, they fall into 4 categories. The first category is that one. It covers adultery, fornication, uncleanness, and lewdness. That category number 1 has 4 works of the flesh. Those are 4. It is sexual immorality. That is group number 1. When you go to group number 2, it covers 2 areas: idolatry and witchcraft or sorcery. Sometimes they say sorcery, other times they say witchcraft. So group number 2 is idolatry and witchcraft. That is group number 2. Group number 3 is the biggest. It covers a lot of activities, and it goes all the way from that one. That's group number 3. It covers hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambition, dissensions, heresies, envies, and murders. It has 9 works of the flesh. This is the biggest of the works of the flesh. This is the biggest of the works of the flesh. The last one is drunkenness and revelries. Ebinyumu. Drunkenness and revelries. That one has only 2 works of the flesh. But look at this one. The longest list really falls in this, where you find hatred, okuchawagana in Luganda. Contentions are like rivalries, the same. Contend is like what we're talking about, the divisions among us. Jealousies, as to say, so and so is doing this, I must do this also. Outbursts of wrath, you know, that is still referring obusungu mpaka kukyawagana. Selfish ambition, dissensions of Kwesalamu, heresies, envy, and murders. This group has 9 works of the flesh. It is the longest because the works of the flesh or carnality manifests itself most in this particular area. It manifests in competitions, jealousies, divisions, okwesalamu, okweyawula. That this is the biggest. Carnality manifests itself most in this particular area. Of the 4 groups, this is the most prevalent, as you can see. When Paul is listing the works of the flesh, he gives the biggest or longest list in this particular group, because the first one has only 4: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, and rudeness. The second has only 2: idolatry and witchcraft. By the way, you remember when we were dealing with witchcraft, we saw that witchcraft, as a work of the flesh, work through manipulation, intimidation, domination, and control. That is sorcery, what you would call witchcraft here. That is how it manifests itself as a work of the flesh. If you stay in it long enough, or you do it long enough, you continue manipulating, you open a door to a spirit. Initially, it is a work of the flesh, but you do it long enough, it opens a door to a spirit. Each one of these does the same. If you are in fornication, you commit a fornication, you open a door to a spirit of fornication. If you were in hatred long enough, you continue in that, a spirit will enter you. Now, what is the difference between the two is that while you can discipline the work of the flesh, you can decide and say, no, I don't want to continue in this spirit of greed or the spirit of lust. You can discipline your flesh. But once you have been in that work long enough and they have opened the door to a spirit, once it comes in, that you cannot control it by discipline. You do not discipline a spirit, you cast it out. You cast out demons because they are undisciplined. That particular area in which you have opened the door to the spirit, you are unable to control it. It is something that you do without even wanting it, because it's now a spirit. You can no longer control it. You are compelled. Demons compel. They force you to do certain things. Where a spirit has come in, now you do things by compulsion because the spirit is behind it. You can't discipline a spirit. No, you have to cast it out. But after you've cast out the spirit, you still will have to continue to discipline the flesh, because the flesh opened the door in the first place. So you discipline the flesh, you cast out the demon. You do not discipline a demon, and you cannot cast out the flesh. You don't cast out the flesh. You can't. You only discipline the flesh because it's with you 24/7. You cannot cast away your flesh. You can only discipline it. But if the spirit has entered, you can't discipline the spirit. Those demons cannot be disciplined. They're indisciplined. You only cast it out. So that is the difference. But I wanted to underscore the fact that the longest list is this particular one, which deals with contentions, hatred, jealousies, outbursts of wrath. So this is the longest of the 4 groups of the works of the flesh. Of all the 17 works of the flesh, this one alone takes 9. So you can see how this is a big, big, big issue. It wasn't just, this isn't just in our time, even in Paul's time. This was a big problem, and it has always been in the human race, the issue of lust. So it is not doctrine, therefore, that we normally are separated, divided. It's just carnality. Carnality cannot get along with your brother or your sister. It will always look for something to contend, to be jealous of, to strive, and so on and so forth. So that is that. So that is what I was explaining. That we need to see it from that light. You see, diagnosis is very important. If you want to deal with the problem, you must first diagnose what you're dealing with. If it's a sickness, if you don't diagnose the problem, you treat a wrong disease. You'll be dealing with malaria when actually it is something else. So you treat malaria when it's not malaria. So that is what's important. But the right diagnosis is 50% success. If you can rightly diagnose the problem, most likely you'll be able to handle it, because then you'll be treating it with the right medicine. At least you have fully understood what you're dealing with. So it's important to know where our problem stems from. Okay, another question?
Yes, good morning, Bishop. This is Stephen Wanga.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question. There's a testimony of a sister who was into witchcraft, and she really went deep, where she could leave her body, go and cause an accident, and then come back. She had reached that point where she really was in that situation. And she was introduced into this by her grandmother, the mother of her father. Now, of course, she's delivered now, and that is history. But the issue is that her father was a pastor. So her grandmother came and visited them. And the pastor was doing well, the church was doing very well, ministries, what have you, of an orphanage, and things are really moving well, finances are there and so on. But when the grandmother, who was a witch, visited them, within 2 months, she did something, and within 2 months, all the ministry was finished, the financing and everything was finished, such that now he became a pauper, where he could not, put food on the table and everything. And now she was the one who had to help them. The witch doctor had to help them and so on. So my question is, how could this pastor could have done to prevent this sorcery from influencing his ministry and so on? Thank you.
Yeah, praise the Lord. That's a very, very good question, pertinent, and especially in our time. First and foremost, the most dangerous part there is that this father, this brother, or was a pastor, this was his mother. So, but this brother or pastor really knew about his mother. He knew what his mother was doing, because when he was young, I know that story, and I read it too, the father had rejected witchcraft himself. He knew what his mother was doing. For him, he decided to get saved. And it seems he left home and decided, no, I'll not follow the ways of my mother. For me, I'm going to get saved and I'm going to serve God. Where the mistake was, I think, was where he did not take the necessary precaution. This is something that is very important for all of us who are listening. When you know what these witches do, the doors that we open, and that is what I'm going to deal with. Which door did this pastor open? Because what we've been discussing here along this time was that as long as we are in divine order, witchcraft cannot defeat us. Witchcraft always defeats us using the fifth column. And for those who are joining us today and you've not been with us, the fifth column refers to a group of traitors within that betray the city from the outside attackers. It's a term that was developed during the Spanish Civil War, when the Spanish were fighting each other around the Second World War. After the Second World War, one general was attacking one of the Spanish cities, and he was asked, how are you going to take over the city? His answer was, I have 4 columns advancing against the city, one from the north, one from the south, one from the east, and one from the west. And then he paused and said, but it is the 5th column that will take over the city for me. So he was asked, where is the 5th column? And he said the 5th column is within the city. The 5th column was within the city, while the outside attackers were coming from out. The group that will take over the city, he said, are already within. So the 5th column is a group of traitors within the city who betrayed to the outside attackers. That's why we get that term, and it's used commonly in warfare. Now, the way witchcraft attacks, and in this particular case that Stephen has just mentioned, the mother managed to penetrate the defenses of the family. Why? First and foremost, she's a member of the family. And normally, when somebody is our relative, somebody is very close, we tend to, to not be suspicious. We don't tend to put our defenses up. This does not just happen in the family like that. It also happens in church. When such people come into church, they manage to infiltrate the church and cause mayhem. In the same way, because they're using a 5th column, they come and become members of the worship team, and they are the most committed, the most dedicated. When the pastor asks for giving, they are the first ones to give. So people who come with those motives and evil intentions are normally like that. Why do they do that? So that you put down the defenses, you accept and embrace them at face value, because this person is attending every meeting, attending every this, attending every day. While others come late, they come in time. While others are delaying, and they are already the first ones to. This is how the enemy manages to infiltrate our ranks. When wrong people come in church, That is the strategy they use. But now this mother comes, and this is his son. So he comes at home, and he manages, because the father has put down his defenses. Then he can come in, she can come in, and twala bazzukulu bo. Now, the father has allowed his mother to take his daughter, that is the lady's granddaughter, to her home. Now, when children are still young, and I want you to listen to this very, very carefully, the parents are the protection, they are the defense for the children. And while the children are under the discipline of their parents, they are protected. According to God's order of the family, discipline of parents is designed to protect children from spiritual forces which are too strong for them to bear out by themselves. I repeat that. When children are under you, even if you are not saved, still there is a protection that we have, because demons can't just enter human beings anyhow. They don't enter you by just sitting next to a witch doctor. That does not make demons get access into you. They don't just enter you just because you are in a taxi, traveling from Kampala to Mbale, you are sitting next to a witch doctor, and it's full of demons. So by the time you get to Mbale, the demons have fully entered you. No, demons don't enter just because you're seated next to a witch doctor. They don't enter you by osmosis. They don't enter you by just sitting next. You have to open a door. And the door that you open is normally a sin or fear. Fear opens a door to Satan, because fear is to Satan what faith is to God. Faith attracts God, fear attracts Satan. So you open a door by either committing a sin or fear. Fear is such a big, big door. Okay, now, if discipline of parents protects their children, in other words, as long as the children are submissive to their parents, that submission provides a protection. By the way, the institutions that God ordained in the human race, their main purpose is for our protection. When we hear the word authority, most people, when they hear that word, they are negative. They don't like the word authority because their first thinking is who is going to command who. But that word authority is intended for our protection. That's why God instituted those authorities. The parents, the husband, the pastor, your boss at work, civic or government leader, those are God-given authorities and institutions. They are intended to provide you with protection, because as long as you submit to them and you obey them, then you are safe, you are protected. That the real issue of authority, what God intended with authority, is for our protection. Remember, we are dealing with an enemy who is far superior in wisdom, in power, in might, in every sense of the word. Satan is very, very superior, and his enemies. Superior in wisdom. One angel killed 185,000 soldiers during Sennacherib Hezekiah, 185,000 soldiers in one night. So that's one angel. So we are dealing with these angels. They are like that. So powerful. How can we be protected from such a vast army? They outnumber us. They are far superior, too strong, very wise. They don't die. They have a lot of experience. We have limited years here on earth. What did God do in order that we, his people, are protected from such a vast army, which would destroy us if they could? Why is it that they can't just kill us anyhow? The way God did it was those institutions provide protection. As long as we are under authority, we are protected by the power of God. So God created those institutions to pass on his protection. His protection comes through those institutions, even for non-believers. So while children are obedient to their parents, there is a protection upon them. While a wife is submissive to her husband, there is a protection on her. And I always encourage and advise married women, don't go on the front line fighting without the covering of your husband. The New Testament talks a lot about that covering of wives. It is referring to that. That's where the protection is, because we are dealing with an enemy that is far superior. Now, I'm using all that explanation to show, to bring to home the point of the door of entry. So when you know that, the principle that I've just explained, that as a parent, I'm the protection for my children. While the children are under you, they don't have protection for themselves. They're so vulnerable. By the way, nurses in hospitals, those especially who are involved in witchcraft, they use the time of delivery as a means to enter babies. Demons can enter babies. John the Baptist met Jesus the first time when they were still in the womb, and they could recognize each other. And the theologians say John the Baptist was filled with the Holy Spirit at that time when Mary and Elizabeth first met. So children, babies, even in the womb, can be filled with the either Holy Spirit, as John the Baptist was, or by evil spirits. It is even worse when they are born. The mother is totally helpless. She's just been pushing the baby after a long delivery of many hours of travail, and the nurse is in full control of your baby. They use a lot of that time. I got so many stories in Mulago where there are such nurses that have infiltrated some of these hospitals, including Mulago, where their main work and mission is to do this. Sometimes they even kill these babies, they sacrifice them, they do a lot of evil around that time. Why? Because the mother is very vulnerable, very tired, helpless, may not even have a relative there at hand, and so forth. Anyway, I'm not going to that side. But the father of this girl allows her mother to take the daughter. So when a parent gives somebody else authority to take his daughter, you have now ceded your authority. You've put your authority to protect your child, you've put it in the hand of whoever you've done it. When we started having children, I always told my wife, be very careful who you give the child, the baby to. At that time, she didn't fully appreciate what I was saying, but I was very, very, very cautious about this. And I always was very, very strict. And I told her, don't ever just give your baby to anybody, because the moment you do that, that baby is in another person's power now. And they can cause demons to enter there, because you've, without your knowledge, you don't even know it, but you've put that child who is vulnerable, who has no protection, and you've given that baby or child into their hands. It's important where you send your children to school, for example. Once you give your child to the school, to the headmistress or headmaster, now they're in full control. They have full powers over that child. In the Sunday school, in a kindergarten, in childcare, this is where these wrong people normally target, because they have vulnerable children who have no protection by themselves. And normally, that's how spirits enter. This particular child Stephen is talking about, the grandmother took the girl to the grave and did her incantations, and the demons entered this child at the age 7. She took her to the grave, made her lay on the grave, and she did all her things. And, when the girl tells the story of what she saw, what actually happened from that moment, demons, evil spirits entered her at the age, very early age. Now, that is the father being naive. He definitely knew that his mother, was deeply involved in witchcraft. He knew it. He himself had rejected it. He was a pastor, he loved God, he prayed, but lacked knowledge, lacked some of these principles, and therefore ended up being or opening a very, very big door into his house, into his finances. Now, when you open a door like that, of course, for the finances, I don't know which other doors were opened, but it is just as what he did with the child, because the grandmother took the granddaughter and she said, this is the one I want now to be my successor. Suppose you're a Christian and you go in the home of a witch, and you are relative to that witch, you are a relative of Mama Fina, and you've gone there, and she accepts to give you her daughter. You come with her daughter, and she spends time with you. What will you do to that daughter? You start to talk to her about God. You start to explain to this daughter, Mama Fina's daughter, you can lead that daughter to the Lord. And when that daughter commits her life to the Lord and says, no, I don't want what Mama is doing. I want to be saved. I want to pray. I want to read the Bible. I want to serve God. We've seen so many children coming from such families, committing their lives to God, and they get totally changed. They may live within a family of witches, or people worship gods and idols or witchcraft, but they themselves make a decision, and from that moment, they're totally free, and they can serve God the rest of their lives. If they don't open a door again, they can serve God. The opposite is also true. This daughter, having gone with with the grandmother, they became very good friends. And the first thing the grandmother said to the granddaughter, don't tell your father the grandmother loved the granddaughter so much. So she felt loved, special, what. And so she never told the father or mother what was happening. So she was always going and visiting the mother and the grandmother from school, holidays, what. And during that time, she was being initiated. She got so deep into this that the next 11 years, she became, a witch herself, killing people and getting involved in this and that, right in the home of a pastor, Yeah, the pastor is the parent, yet the daughter has been initiated, and she constantly brings charms, witchcraft into the house. And that's how the family defense was breached. And so the guy lost everything. She explained that every time the family came together to pray, she was always doing her incantations and rendering this whole family helpless to the forces of darkness. So God, although God has protection over this family provided, but now you have a fifth column. You have a daughter serving the devil and working against the family all the time. She's using her privileged position as a beloved daughter and fighting her family and on behalf of her grandmother. So that's how doors are opened. First and foremost, the question is, as parents, you have to be careful into whose hands we put our children, because the children under age don't have a protection of their own. They depend on the protection of the parents. You remember when Jesus was always dealing with children, he would ask the parent, and it is the parent's faith which would heal the children. If you go back into the Gospels, you'll find that very clearly. He would ask the father, and the father would speak on behalf of the child, and Jesus would depend on the parents' faith to heal the child. Or like that woman, a Syrophanian woman in Syrophania, present-day Lebanon, where Jesus had gone, and the mother was crying and pleading with Jesus, and Jesus said, "No, I don't give children's bread to the dogs." The one who was sick was the child, and the mother was the one pleading. So, because when children are still young, the parents, what the parents decide, the parents are deciding or can decide for their children. They can decide, like Joshua can decide that I and my house shall serve the Lord. So when Joshua decided like that, the wife and the children under Joshua's home now are all going to serve the Lord. If Joshua had decided, I and my house shall serve the devil, the children would have served the devil, because he still has authority. Until children are of age, and then they make a decision themselves, and they said, no, I don't want. They can make that decision and choose God instead. When God makes a covenant with Abraham, the whole family under Abraham is now under covenant. Isaac, Jacob, even the children of Israel in Egypt are all affected by the covenant made by the father, by the grandfather. You are either blessed or cursed by the covenants made. But that is the same principle by which all of us are under the curse of Adam. We now continue to die because Adam, our grandfather, did what he did. We were in him. So covenants are like that. But also in life, you make a choice. God asked Isaac, do you want the covenant of Abraham? Isaac said yes, then God confirmed it. Then he asked Jacob, do you want the covenant of Abraham and Isaac? Jacob said, no, when you bless me where I'm going in Padan Aram, if you bless me and I come back blessed, then you'll be my God. Then I'll give you a tithe. So God blessed him. And then when he came back, he said, yeah, now I also want you to be my God. But you see, he had the right to say yes or to say no. So parents, especially as fathers, you exercise God's authority over your family. You can say, I and my house shall serve the Lord. You can pray and say, no evil shall befall me, neither shall any plague come near my house. Psalms 91. No evil shall befall me. That is you individually. Neither shall any plague come near my house. So you can cover your house. You can pray for yourself, but you also can cover your house. Paul told the Philippian jailer, you shall be saved and your household. So household salvation is one of our heritage. You, as a man in charge of your family, you can ask for that household salvation, which is a right to you. You can say, Lord, I'll be saved and my household. You promise that I can be saved and my household. So you claim your house. You claim your household before God, and you say, I want my household to be saved. So that is, I don't know whether I fully, Stephen, I think it's, I hope that clarifies the point.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that is the actual story. You got it. It's the right one. Yes.
Yeah, I've read that story of the lady who was called Erica. I think I'm sure that's the one you're referring to.
Yes, that's the one, exactly. I
Okay.
just saw it 2 days ago and I was so amazed.
Yes, that is the story. I've read. She's written books, and she has a lot of videos on YouTube on her story. Beyond that, you remember that even after that, then she was in Jinja, and again, her parents was negligent, and she went to watch one of these artists, and that's when she went to another level now. In addition to what the grandmother had done, then these artists, these singers in town who was involved deeply in witchcraft came to Jinja town, and she went, and then from that again, she went to another level where she was now initiated deeper, but the door had been opened by the grandmother. She was already a candidate for that. Okay, any other person who has a question? Thank you for that question. It's very good and enlightening. Anybody along the lines that we are covering now, we are dealing with witchcraft? Yes, we would love to hear. If you have any question, please ask. And do it quick because our time is not on our side. How can we help such children? This is Livia. We help children who have, do you mean children who have already been initiated or something? I hope that is the question you're asking. Just like
yes, those that are already initiated and we don't know.
And you don't know. Now, what you need to, for your children, let me start with the children that are under your authority already. Your children are under your authority. While they're still under your authority, you have a lot of you have power, you have authority over them. You can help them. That one is not a problem because children who are under your authority, Stephen has done a lot of sharing here about family. The beginning is the family altar. Family altar is very, very important. When Erica was describing the way the family, lost power over her, was she always dodged the family altar. She always had a reason why she would not attend, and the parents didn't mind so much if you follow her story. And she fought it. She made sure that family altar is weakened. So that is a big, big area. When children have been initiated like that, they always fight the things of God. They look for opportunities to avoid times like that where the family comes together to pray. And for you as a parent, this is something that you need to be aware of. And therefore, make sure you do everything in your power to encourage, especially when children are still young. Discipline includes such things where you ensure that they all attend that family altar because it helps in case doors have been opened. When you pray together like this, there is something you'll quickly notice if there is a problem. It will help you to notice if your children have been somehow influenced. It may not even be witchcraft only, it may be other things, but it will be easier for you to identify those who may have been affected. Then number 2, you teach children to read the Bible by themselves. What we are doing in our church is to make sure that everybody does meditation. They do meditation and they write their meditations. And then we mark them, not to say you have failed or passed. Many people, because of what exams have done, our education was totally, it gives the impression for the children that exams are always our enemy. When we were still young, you used to, in primary, we used to say those poems. I don't know that some of you have heard it. November is approaching, the month of seasonal harvest, cramming, preparing for the harvest. See, days and hours strive slowly, softly away. Days are counted like one preparing for the wedding. 2 days, 1 day left. The great day approaches. The bell rings. Also, the heart beats inside the body like a clock. You start to feel cold. And so we used to say such things about exams. Exams are feared. Exams are our enemies. Get ready before they come. Those poems made us hate anything to do with writing, exams. They became an enemy. Now, we struggle to encourage people to write down their meditations, especially when you tell them that when you write your meditations, and it will help you to learn to do it. We use 6 questions when we are doing meditation. Maybe Bishop Kabuye, you'll do something, a lesson in here, and I can likewise do the same. But we will help some of you to help you in the simple terms of how you can start your family on this journey of doing personal meditation. The Word of God has so much power to deal with whatever Satan has managed to infiltrate. When you get your children to do Bible meditation, you are sending the medicine into their spirits, the Word of God. The Word of God has so much power in people's lives, and it can deal with all those things. The demons are very, very uncomfortable. When somebody is into the Word, it will be the Word, because you shall know the Word. Jesus said, you'll be my disciples indeed, and you know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. The main way people are set free is not a a prayer or deliverance service. The primary way God intended for people to be delivered is knowing the truth. It is the truth that sets you free. The temporary, it's like when you are dealing with a poor, an emergency situation where somebody needs charity. Charity is not only given to those who would die if they don't get it. But you cannot take people out of poverty by giving them charity, continuous charity. You will not be helping them. So deliverance services are like charity. They are not sustainable. The sustainable way is the truth. When they know the truth shall set them free. I want to repeat that because there, in our days, many churches don't encourage people to read the Bible, the word themselves, to learn to pray, to learn to read and study the word and meditate in it, to learn to give, to learn to pray and fast for themselves, to learn these basic disciplines of witnessing and fellowshipping. There are 6. They're the one which turn a convert into a disciple. That is the real thing. That's how you make people grow sustainably. If you make people depend on a prayer service, on a deliverance service, that is like charity. Charity is only intended for people who would die if they don't get that charity. Once you get them out of that danger, now quickly get them over to themselves, working, tilling the land to get their own income. That's what God did. As soon as they got out of the wilderness, manna ceased from falling from heaven. You can't keep the church, the believers, on charity, on praying for them all the time. Deliverance service, you will not sustainably keep them. They won't be free by just an anointed man of God. A man of God in the house, a man of God in the house. There are people who just live on that, from one conference to another, from one seminar to another, from this event to another event, just because they're going to pray for you. You'll find it very soon. Those people can never totally get free. Our time, unfortunately, is done today. We can come back on some of these things tomorrow. God bless you. Back to you, Bishop.
Thank you so much, Bishop. More especially when you have talked about deliverance